Hi, I'm Ian and welcome back to Astro Time Traveller. This is a 4-part series showing you how I captured and processed an image of the Rosette Nebula. In the first 3 parts I've shown you the capturing side using the ZWO ASI Air Pro and how I did my initial processing with Pixinsight and Deep Sky Stacker. In this final section I'm going to show you how I process the image through the nonlinear stage in Pixinsight, particularly using a series of masks to help get noise reduction and coloration into it, and then also how I finally use Photoshop to conclude processing the image. And at the end of this video you'll see a number of images that I ended up with. As you go through the processes you usually end up with a variety of images based on different actions you've taken through processing. Some of these will show you with full stars, with a lighter number of stars, and with no stars at all. So sit back and hopefully enjoy and learn maybe some things of how I process this image. Hi, welcome back to Pixinsight. Here we have the stretched image of the Rosette Nebula that we finished part 3 with. And now in this final part, what I'm going to do is further enhance the image in the non-linear stage, mostly using a series of masks to do various things to the nebulosity of the image, to do noise reduction and to do coloration with curves, etc. So up here on the right hand side you can see a number of presets that I've got, and the top ones are what I use for doing masks. The first mask I'm going to create, in fact I'm going to create 2, I'm going to use StarNet to do that, but to do that I need a luminous image. So I'm going to click up here and this will produce me a luminous image. It takes a few seconds because we have a drizzle version of the image this time. There it is. And if I open up StarNet, I've got my presets here to create a star mask, and if I just then drag this over to the image it will start doing that. It takes a little while, so I'll come back when this concludes. So here we are, it's just about to conclude doing that and bringing me the star masks. There we are. So I've got both a stars only and I've got a galaxy only. So I'm going to use both of these. First thing I'm going to do is actually use the histogram on the star one to just bring it out a bit more. So if we just make sure all that's back, bring out a preview, make sure we're set to 0 to 1, and then what I'm just going to do is just going to bring that a little bit sharper, a little bit darker there, and then bring out the stars a bit stronger. So yeah, a little bit darker. Yep, so that's good, so I'm happy with that. So if I now just click on that, and I'm going to rename this and just call it SM for star mask. So there we go, and then we'll just pop that up the top here, and then on this one I'm going to do something similar, but I'm going to use this to start with as my galaxy mask. So to do that again I'm going to use the histogram, and what I first want to do is kind of bring it down, so I've only really got, and it's actually done a pretty good job on just doing the galaxy. So if I bring that all the way down, a bit more lightness, there we go. So that looks pretty good. So I'm happy with that, so I'm going to click on there, bring that out, and then what I want to do is I want to do a little bit of now I could touch this up with clone stamp and get rid of any artifacts, but it looks pretty clean. But what I do want to do is just make it a little bit more fuzzy, so I'm going to use convolution and bring that out, and again just use a real-time preview and just make sure that it's fairly fuzzy. So I think there it is in its kind of sharpness form, and then if you have it over here you've got it pretty fuzzy, and yeah, I want it yeah, something like that. So that's good. So again, I'm happy with that. So click on there to do that. There we go. So again, I'll rename this and I'll call it Galaxy Mask. Good. So that's my first two masks done. Now, what I'm going to want to do is also have a mask to cover both the stars and the nebulosity. So to do that, I need to start off with another luminance mask. So I'll bring that out. Again, just takes a few seconds to get that up and running. There we go. And then what I'm going to call this is just call this M for mask. So just call that an M. And we can put that, but actually let's bring that back. Let's just use the histogram to bring out a bit of strength in this one as well. So again, just reset, bring out a real-time preview. In particular, bring the darks way over here. Yep, that's good. Bring up the lights a little bit more. Yep, that's probably about okay. So just do that. So now we've got that. So that's good. So we can now put that up here. And then what we're going to use is a bit of Pixinsight. So I can just move this and make it a little bit smaller. Bring it down a touch. Right, so if we use, over here I've got Pixinsight. And what I want to use is a formula which is M minus SM. So the masks minus the star mask. And I just want to go down here, check I've got creating a new image. Yep. So if I click create a new image, oh, wrong one. So if I click create a new image, it will give me a mask that does both. And I'll call this M2. Okay, so that's pretty much all of the masks. I'm going to have one more mask though, which is going to be a range selection mask. So we click on the preview here and then we just move the elements here. There we go. That's good. And what I want to do is I want to bring out the element in the middle. So if we look at this, yeah, I want to get a little bit of lightness in the inner core bit. So I just want to, I think that's about right. Yep. So that looks good. I'm going to make it a little bit fuzzy. Smooth it out a little bit. So I think that looks good. So I'll now create that mask. And it will, there we go. So I can close the real-time preview. I can close Pixinsight, and we'll call this range mask, RM. So now we have all of our masks. We can start using them for different things that we want to do. And the first thing I really want to do is noise reduction. So I'm going to use not TGV denoise this time, but ACD noise reduction, because I think that just works better with this image when I looked at it before. So the first thing I'm going to do is just open that up, and what I'm going to want to do is create a lightness mask. So we need to do a preview. So if we click on that and go to preview, it brings this up, and then we can play with these down here to get what we want. So I probably want to get the lightness there, but I want the galaxy, the nebula, to be fairly well protected. So if I play around with those, that's so anything that's dark is well protected, and anything that's light will be impacted by the noise reduction. So I think that's pretty much what I want. So I'm happy with that. So I can come off preview, and I can actually close the real-time preview. Now I'm here in the chrominance and lightness. I need to make sure I've clicked the lightness mask because I'm going to use that. And then in applying this lightness, I'm probably going to go to something like 2. 2 and chrominance somewhere around 3, because chrominance can be a bit stronger. I'll probably apply that to about 90%, not fully. Everything down here, I might just reduce the threshold down to 0.15, and then everything else I think on here I'll leave as is. So the next thing to do is create a preview. So let's pick an area where we can see both the nebula and also the surrounding bit. So let's have a look at that. So now let's just practice on that. So just drag the... So there we are, it's finished. So if we zoom in, let's go up to this area of the image. There we go. So that is it now. If we click up here, we can see before and after. So that's the before, and that's the after. That's the before, and that's the after. So you can see it's really smoothed out the background very well indeed, and probably even an element of the nebula on the side. Yep, there's a little bit there. So I'm actually happy with that. So what I'll now do is I'll do that to the whole image. This will take a little while, so I'll come back when this is completed. So just click on the square box to hit the whole image. So we're back, and that's now completed on the whole image. So I'm really happy with that. I think that looks really good. If I look around the image as a whole, you can see the background is pretty smooth everywhere. So that's great. So that's the noise reduction done from that perspective. So we can now close that, and the next thing I probably want to do is just darken the background. So for that I'm going to use my M2 mask. So this is going to protect both the nebula and the stars. So if I click on there, so if I go into curves, first thing I want to do is just look at the mask, and I want to inverse the mask. So let's just invert that. And then if we go into curves, open a preview, and then go to RGB, just very light touch on the background. So there we go, it just brings it down a little bit. So let's put that in, and then we might do it a couple of times. So yep, that's a little bit. So just one more time. Yep, happy with that for the moment. So we're done with that for the background. Now what I want to do is do some work on the actual nebula itself. So I'll take this mask off, so just remove mask. And now I want to put on my galaxy mask. Well, I don't know why I called it GM, I should have called it NMAR, shouldn't I? It's not galaxy, it's nebula. So we put that on, and again let's have a look at the mask, show mask. So okay, we can do that. If I use my preview here, probably I want a new preview, so I can get rid of these two previews so far. And let's do a preview that's right at the center of the nebula, like that. And then what I'm going to do is use HDR multi-scale. So this is the one that really brings out some of the nebulosity depending on what we actually do with it. We want to click on the lightness mask. So let's just try this at 6 and see how that works. Everything else you leave as is. So this will take a few seconds to this. Now what does that look? That looks pretty good. So let's have a look up here, before and after. Before, after. So it's just brought a little bit of, yeah, I kind of like that. So I think I'm just going to leave it at the 6. I'm not even going to play around with changing that. So we now can do that to the whole image. So just click on the square. So that's now done. So I think that looks pretty good. It's bringing out a bit of the detail there. So happy with that. And then the next element I want to do is local histogram equalization. So this is quite a tricky one because you've got to get the right balance. Again, we'll use a preview, but you can set this up beforehand. Probably a fairly light touch, only 1.5. Probably this at about 120, 124, 124, and the amount, let's start it at 500 and see what that looks like. So this takes a little while because we're in a drizzle, but let's look at a real-time preview. And there it is, so we can see before and after. Before and after. Oh, that's not too bad. So it's bringing out a bit more of the lanes, fairly subtle. So let's just have a look. If we just bump up the contrast a little bit to say 2.5. Yeah, it gives a little bit more contrast, doesn't it? So, and at 2, these are all very delicate movements. I think I'm going to go with 2. So I'm thinking I'm happy with that. Let's have a look if we go all the way down to say 250. Yeah, that's very subtle. So I'm going to leave it at 500. Let's say 450. That brings out a little bit more in here of the nebulosity. So I'm happy with that. So we can close the preview, and now we go to the full image, and we can click on our square to. So there we are, completed on that. So I think that looks pretty good. I think you've got some really nice definitions of the nebulosity in here. So I'm pretty happy with that. So the next thing I'm going to do is some coloration. So for this we're going to use curves transformation. And to start with, I want to do the stars. So I'm going to remove my current mask and I'm going to add in the star mask. So if we go to the star mask and we look at what we've got there, so show mask, so it's protecting everything other than the stars. So I'm ready to do some work on colouring the stars a bit. So again, let's do a real-time preview, and then let's see what we use. We use saturation. So we just want to go upwards to bring out the colour of the stars, and you go all the way crazy like that, and then that brings a whole load of colours across, which I don't want to do. So I'm just going to do a little bit. Something like that, I think, works. So I can move that onto the image, because once it's done, you can see it again repeated in the real-time preview. So no, I'm going to leave it as it is. So I'm happy, again, I'm happy with that. So now I want to do some work on the nebulosity within the image, although I think what I'm going to do is just darken this a bit more one more time. So if I come back and remove that mask, I add back my M2 mask, and then if we look at that mask, we invert that mask. So again, I can change a bit on the background, go back to curves, real-time preview, back into here, and just bring down I think about there. So nothing too much, but just to bring back the background a little bit, right? So we're done with that. Now we can take off that mask and bring back the mask, the what I call galaxy mask, but in fact the nebula mask. So let's just look at that. Right, so everything's protected other than the galaxy. So again, now we go to a real-time preview. And again, what I want to do here is probably just do a little bit of saturation. So if we bring that up, you can see the different colours you can get. So you can get, if you go here, you get a real different colour on the inside. That's a bit aggressive, so I don't really want to do that. Let me just go back to here. Let's just bring up a little bit of tones there. That's fine. So let's put that onto the image. see what happens when I add in the range mask. So I'm going to take that mask off, open up the range mask, put that on. Okay, just check we've got the mask on. So yep, so everything's protected but the outer side. So let's just show that mask. And again, if we go back to curves or real-time preview, this time I do want to do highlights. See what happens if I play around with the highlights. Nothing good. So let me come back to that. So let's have a look at saturation. So if I play with saturation. So actually I don't really like this mask, so I'm not going to use it. So we'll forget that. We'll get rid of the real-time preview and we'll take that mask off. So what I want to do then is just use the nebula mask one more time just to add a little bit more colour. So let's go back into here, look at the real-time preview. Now what can we do with this? If we play around with this, we'll get some interesting central colours. So I think we need to be subtle because we can use a little bit of Photoshop to do this. So let's just do a little bit of that, just a little curve there. Okay, happy with that. Another go with saturation. So click back to start again. Let's have a look at saturation. Okay, you can bring it into be pretty spectacular, very dense, but I can do a bit of that in Photoshop and you can take it right out, so there's nothing there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do again a little bit subtle, not too much. We'll see what we can do in Photoshop. So I'm happy with that, so get rid of the real-time preview and put that on. And that's pretty much it. We get rid of some of the stars, lessen the stars, or just have a galaxy. Have a nebula on its own. So first thing, remove the masks. So go on, get rid of the preview. And the first thing to do is close down curves. So I'm going to save this image. You can make a duplicate, so you could just drag that over and you've got another image there. So let me just close that down and save that down here. But what I tend to do is at this stage I'll save my image. So if I just do that quickly, and we'll call that all, and then I'll just save as a 32-bit. And then if we want to reduce the stars, we use the metamorphical transfer. So here we probably want, let's go for 5. We click on the round button to get the star shape, and then let's just see what happens. Okay, so that's pretty good. Looks before and after. So I kind of like that. So again, I'm going to close that down. I'm going to save this. Just call it less stars. Very high tech. And then the final thing I want to do is just run through and do an image without stars. So I'm going to use the original image I had, which is now a clone. And for this, we just run the StarNet procedure on the full. So let's just do that, and then we'll see what the end result looks like. So I'll come back when this is done because this will take a little while. Okay, so we're done on that. So let's just close the StarNet. There's the star mask, which we're not so interested in, so we'll just close that up. And here's the actual image of the nebula. So we could leave it like that, but I'm just going to use a little bit of curves, I think, to just see what we can do on bringing down some of the background. So if we just do a little bit of an S-curve on that. Maybe just bring down the background a little bit more. There we go. I think that pops really nicely. So let's just move that onto the image. I think that would be a bit too much, but we can play around with that in Photoshop. So that's the last one. So I'm just going to save this image as well. So save as, and we'll call this no stars. So I've saved them under these ones. I'll save each of them also as a TIFF file, and then we'll come across into Photoshop and I'll show you how I finalize the image. So here are the three images in Photoshop. So this is the one with standard one with all of the stars. This is the one with the less stars, and this is the one with no stars. So if we go to the first one, the first thing I'm doing is just unlock the background, and then I'll go up into filter and camera raw filter. And this is going to be the main tool I'm going to use to adjust the image. And I really go through 2 or 3 steps. So firstly, I just look at changing the clarity. So just bringing out a little bit more clarity in the nebula, something like that. Similar with the texture. I don't want too much because it'll bring the stars too far forward. So that's great. Then I go to contrast, and I just want to make the contrast a little bit stronger. And then I go through each of these next ones and just do a little bit more on highlights, depending on how much colour I want out of it. That's good. Likewise, just move them until you get a feel for what your eye actually likes. Not a great deal on whites, and on the blacks, just bring that down. So pretty happy with that. So once I've done that, I could play around with saturation, so you can make it a little bit more saturated. Maybe I'll do a little bit, so that looks maybe a bit too strong, maybe there. And on the vibrance, you can bring more vibrance in, but I'm going to leave vibrance pretty much unaltered. So let's get that back to close to 0. So that image, so it just takes a few seconds to process that through, because this was, remember, drizzled, so it's a bigger image all round. And then I'll do exactly the same with the next 2 images, and just with each of those play with the raw filter to get slightly improved image. So that was the original, and there we are, the final. So pretty happy with that. So we can zoom in, zoom out. So I think that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. And then likewise, do the same thing with the lesser star one. Go into the filter raw, just let it upload. Again, can create slightly different elements. You could do loads of things in Photoshop if you wanted to. I tend to have done most of my work in the Pixinsight, so less here. Just going to make that a little bit more dramatic, a little bit more on texture, because the stars are lesser here, but obviously I'm going to bring them out a little bit more. Contrast I can take down, and then again just playing with the highlights. I'm going to keep this a fairly darker image, and again I'm happy with that. So saturation too strong, just a little bit more. There we go. So do that, and again it will process this image, and then we'll move to the final non-star one. And then once I've done all that, I'll show you a series of images that came as a result of the work I've done here, and other ones on this same set of data. And I must admit, I really want to thank someone like Shawn Nielsen on Visible Dark, who really has some great tutorials on using Pixinsight. I followed a lot of what he has advised, and that's really helped me immensely. And Mitch also did a huge number of introductory email videos into how to use Pixinsight. So both of those are really good ones. I'll put in the list a few others that I use as well. So a little bit more clarity on here. We can be probably a little bit
little bit bolder. And then on the contrast, I'm going to try and bring the background out a bit. There we go. And bring out the highlights. You can play around with these to a huge extent. And just get the dark. So, yep, let's go for that. And that completes it. So thanks very much for watching these 4 parts. As I said, the first 2 I went through the ZWO ASI Air Pro and how that worked. And the last 2 I've been going through Pixinsight, Deep Sky Stacker, and here we're finishing off with Photoshop. So I hope you've enjoyed. I hope there's something in here. I'm no expert on any of these things. I've been learning over the last year, but hopefully some of the elements I've shown you in these videos will be helpful for you progressing or advancing whatever you want to do in astrophotography.